Short is the list of DLC for video games which are actually great. Even fewer are the number of expansions which are truly exceptional. I didn't expect the remake version of Separate Ways to take me by surprise so much. Happily, it did. Separate Ways is a DLC not unlike parts of the Left Behind expansion for The Last of Us, which shows us a glimpse of the missing fragments from the opposite side of the main story, a different perspective, or another lens, so to speak. While RE4 focuses on Leon's quest for Ashley, Separate Ways hones in on Ada Wong's journey through the background of the main game's plot, and how her story intersects with Leon. It's a more streamlined and highlight reel sort of a story, but that's basically its secret ingredient. Separate Ways doesn't try to overwhelm you with decadent revelations or even jaw-dropping twists in the narrative. It sets out to do one thing: show us what is on the other side of the veil. The grand performance on display for us with Ada Wong's Curtain Call is a simple, albeit brilliantly executed DLC showing off all of the best aspects of RE4 Remake in a compact 6 to 8 hour expansion. While some can and will make it through Separate Ways sooner than that, I do find that taking your time and making the most of what's on offer in this DLC will run you somewhere in that time range for completion. As I suggested a moment ago, I don't have a long list of great DLC expansions for video games in general. I have a much larger list of fair, average, or even good DLC. It's hard to make an expansion feel as satisfying to play as a full-blown game. Typically, you have a shorter story, a smaller area to roam or complete levels, and often a minorly intriguing idea executed in an uninspired way. Left Behind was notable for how it doesn't attempt anything more than a deep dive into understanding more about Ellie as a character. The gameplay and narrative are fixated on this key concept, which serves as the foundation of the expansion. Freedom Cry, which is one of my all-time favorite DLCs, allows the Assassin's Creed franchise a rare opportunity to be more mature and cover heavier subject matter with Adewale's efforts in Haiti. Blood and Wine tests the limits of expectations we set for DLC. Even at a $30 price tag, the second Witcher 3 expansion was more than worth the purchase price, filled to the brim with a great story, characters, exciting quests, and a breathtaking setting. For me, these three are among my favorite. Separate Ways has something about it which takes the main game's practically perfected formula and gives it a steroid boost on an adrenaline rush of non-stop thrills. For starters, let's look at what this expansion does so well. Well, if you watched my review of Resident Evil 4 Remake, you know how much I loved the moment-to-moment gameplay of the main game. If I was surprised at how good Separate Ways ended up being, I wasn't surprised at how excellent the transition was from Leon to Ada in this DLC. Taking the basics of Resident Evil's slowed action combat, while coupling it with some stylish new grapple maneuvers and attacks, adds just enough to make treading the same ground over again with Ada feel fresh. Her flair as a character is embraced. Quite frankly, there are a few moments throughout the expansion where it felt even stronger than some comparable parts with Leon in the main game. I think the real highlight of it all was the reworked El Gigante fight. Wisely incorporating the grapple gun along with a more open environment to move around in made it feel more like a sandbox to play in, combined with a bunch of really cool animated action figures running about. Players are free to pursue a more ground-based approach in a traditional fashion against the giant. However, if the fancy strikes them, players can grapple around the environment with ease. This creates some versatility which doesn't disrupt or take away from the game's core combat design or from the outstanding Resident Evil action combat showcased throughout the main game. Nothing is left wanting in an encounter like this. The style, the substance, it's all there. Carrying this over to the fights with Basanta, Separate Ways really starts to come into its own. I had previously within my RE4 video lamented the loss of U3's boss fight. With the release of Separate Ways, I found the reason why this occurred. U3 was selected as the secondary antagonist for the expansion. Right off the bat, players are greeted to multiple hallucinatory battles with U3 in her black robe form. These fights threw me off a bit, as I wasn't sure what to expect. Nevertheless, the black robe U3 eventually mutates into its true form for the fight in the underground mining areas. This is the fight I had been waiting for, and it didn't disappoint. Ultimately, a narrow, claustrophobic environment provides a tense back and forth. Careful timing is needed to avoid its lunge attacks from a distance. As usual, players will be focusing on the head for damage dealing. After an initial session of downing the mutant beast, a second phase is initiated as the parasite form of Basanta emerges from U3's rotting corpse. This fight is based on the second phase of the original fight from the 2005 RE4 with Leon. The parasite form will dive into the sand and emerge to surprise attack you. Once more, timing is everything throughout this fight. I'm not gonna lie, I did not play well in this Phase 2 boss fight. I was really thrown off my game for some reason and burned more ammo than I should have while messing up quite a few dodge opportunities. The weak points on Basanta are some glowing exposed flesh bits on the stomach and tail. Dealing enough damage to these exposed portions of the parasite will eventually drop the final form of U3. It should be noted before we move on, the infamous timed falling floors section of the original U3 fight is still absent. It would have been cool to see that return as well, but alas, that one remains permanently isolated in the 2005 version. As long as we're talking about returning sections absent from the remake of the main game, I will happily and gratefully confirm the return of the laser sequence and gondola sequence as well. The gondola pretty much returns exactly as you remember it from the village section of the 2005 game, but this time it shows up on the island section of Separate Ways. Pretty much a simple rearrange example here. It's still fun to pick off the Ganados and Plaga infected mercs in 2023, just as it was in 2005. My love for this short but memorable sequence hasn't changed a bit. Now, I can say that some might make the argument that half of the better moments from the remake version of Separate Ways are simply rearranged or recycled content from the 2005 RE4. That would be accurate and true, but it doesn't change the fact that these moments combined with the other parts of Separate Ways work extraordinarily well together. This brings us to the reworked laser room. Wow, what a great job by the devs to find not only an excuse to incorporate the laser room from RE4, and of course the 2001 Resident Evil film, but also to design the sequence as part of a new monster chase boss fight. Martinico is the name and lasers are its pain in this game. What? Too much? I don't know, I like it. Anyway, Martinico is the new boss created for Separate Ways. It's a hulking creature impervious to harm by any regular weapons you might have on you at the time. The only thing which might have a chance of saving the player's life against this monstrosity is the the laser room. The lasers have been rearranged from Leon's playthrough and placed in the labs on the island where Ada must tread within the final act of the DLC before she confronts Sadler. It's nice knowing, beyond simply referencing the movie, the devs actually wanted to make something creative out of the laser sequence. The OMG moment one experiences when you drop down through the hole and you're greeted by this massive, brutish beast making a beeline for you is quite harrowing. I really didn't expect it, but it turned out to be another highlight for me. Kudos to you, Capcom devs. As a whole, the pacing and energetic drive the game sends you on during this expansion is such great fun. It's not an expansion you should miss out on either. At $10, this DLC is more than packed with enough thrills to make any season thereafter a little more terrifying and thrilling at the same time. Don't mistake this DLC by assuming its shorter length can't provide anything worthwhile in terms of characters or narrative. While not the deepest or most involved, Separate Ways does a nice job of showing the other parts of the nuanced perspective of Ada's character, which I referenced in my review of RE4 Remake. While much of that section in my original video was dedicated to discussing the importance of Ada's role as a femme fatale, I made note that the performance of Lily Gao left me feeling the devs had wanted a more subtle and nuanced portrayal of the character for this game. Given how Separate Ways pans out, it appears that was the case for the most part. Ada is shown multiple times throughout this DLC as being conflicted with whether she should simply press on with her mission or veer off the beaten path, so to speak. This deviation from her more down-to-business mentality occurs when Luis is trying to help Leon and Ashley. Throughout a number of their interactions, Ada is more leeway-giving and open to Luis' pleas for assistance. She isn't portrayed as a self-focused individual determined to only seek out her own means and goals in this DLC. There are multiple times where she seems to make judgment calls based off of her sentiment toward Leon, even allowing Louise to help Leon and Ashley instead of focusing on the search for the Amber. She later defies Wesker's orders multiple times as well, first when it comes to the detonation of the bombs on the island, the second time when it comes to delivering the Amber after she's en route via helicopter. I really enjoyed the intersecting points and crossover moments within the main story. It felt like they planned this out so well in advance. When certain junction points popped up along the way to meet up with the main game's narrative, it felt like such a smooth and natural flow. Ada's seemingly coy and standoffish sort of conversations with Leon, which were seemingly vague in the RE4 remake proper, are now seen with added context and insight. What may have appeared one way is now pointedly another way entirely. There certainly is a lot to be said of the execution of Ada's character arc in this expansion. She may not be quite as lively as some older versions of Ada, but she is just as intriguing as she always was, only now it's in a slightly different sort of way. As far as it goes with Wesker, his presence is great to have back in the franchise. It feels like the good old days again. Obviously, that's the point of the remakes to begin with, but still, it's good to see Wesker having a role to play in the franchise when he's been absent for a while. There are several references within this expansion which continue to heavily imply the emergence of a Resident Evil 5 remake, a game which I sincerely hope becomes a reality because I believe the enhancements made to the combat system with RE2 Remake and RE4 Remake would work wonders for an RE5 remake, coupled with some more horror-focused upgrades here and there. Alas, I digress. Separate Ways not only serves as an excellent companion piece for an incredible remake, but it also acts as a way to set up the future of this remake saga. The highs are very high and the lows are few and hardly in between. From the moment I started to the moment I finished, there wasn't a single chapter of the expansion which disappointed me. The quality and polish we've come to expect from the devs behind Resident Evil's latest hits is still here on proper display for all to see and experience. I highly recommend those who have Resident Evil 4 Remake load back up the game and drop the $10 for this expansion. I seriously doubt you'll be disappointed. If you haven't played RE4 Remake yet, for some reason, make sure you give this DLC a chance when you do play the remake. It's well worth the time and investment. Last things last, let me just say how much energy the remake projects have brought to the franchise. They really have breathed new life back into a series that didn't seem sure of where it needed or wanted to go after Resident Evil 4 and 5 came and went. Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways is not only one of the best DLCs out there, but it's also one of the most fun expansions I have ever played. Let's go with a 9 out of 10 for this one. I'm going to be docking a point as it does utilize rearranged content from RE4 to supplement its set-piece moments, but as I stated earlier, everything comes together so well. With that, we've come to the end of the video. I want to thank you all for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, clicking that like button, and hitting that little bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any new videos as soon as they drop. Thanks again, and have yourself a great day.